Yo, hey, this shit easy, nigga. Hey, all I'm talking about, nigga, I'm still out here trying to get it.
Contender Regime Boxing checking back in with y'all, man. What's good? Mark Magsayo gets the nod versus Gary Russell Jr. in a very, very close fight. It was, in my opinion, it was pretty lackluster. I didn't think either guy really did a whole lot to separate themselves. I actually thought the fight was a draw, but I feel like if it was gonna go to either guy, I'm not mad with them giving the fight to Mark Magsayo. 7-5 in a very close, very narrow, on a very narrow point base in regard to scoring that fight. 7-5 at the most for Mark Magsayo. You know what I'm saying? I really didn't see Gary Russell Jr. winning. I thought it was a draw. I thought the shit was just extremely lackluster. It was a chess match. And I think most of that is on Gary Russell Jr. because the whole time I'm watching the fight, I'm like, why is he only throwing this half-ass straight left all night? You know what I'm saying? Like, Gary Russell Jr. didn't throw no other punch but like a half-ass straight left. And even that, like I said, it didn't even have a whole lot of steam on it. I'm like, what the hell going on? But it seemed like Gary Russell Jr.'s whole strategy was just to use movement, foot movement, and every now and then throw the straight left. Try to land something, but I mean nothing was really landing from either guy that was like crazy like that. Mark Magsayo landed a couple of he was timing that right uppercut. He was trying to catch Gary coming in and time him with that right uppercut, and he grazed him a couple of times with it. Gary did land a straight left a couple of times, but nothing significant that I seen from either guy really landed in the fight. I think they gave that fight to Mark Magsayo purely off of activity because he threw the more punches. He was more of the aggressor in the fight. Gary was doing a whole lot of outboxing and trying to like evade and play a whole lot of defense. His offense was really non-existent. And I know going into the fight, he was talking about he had an injury and all that shit. He missed weight on the first attempt. He actually did go back and make the weight. But Gary Russell Jr., he looked old in there, man. Now, I know he's saying he had an injury, and whether people want to acknowledge that or not, it makes sense from him just throwing, because his best punch is the check right hook. His best punch is that quick, fast right hook. He loved to throw the right hook to the head and the body. And I'm like, damn, he didn't throw no right hooks, and he wasn't using no jabs. So I'm like, something gotta be wrong. And we saw him wince. I think that was like the third or the fourth round. We saw him wince a little bit and kind of like drag his right arm down, like, you know what I'm saying, like his shoulder was fucked up or something. So, but no excuses, honestly, because Gary Russell, you've been out the ring for too long. When you out the ring this long, man, and you do training camps to get ready for a fight after you've been out for a while, sometimes injuries can happen like that. You know what I'm saying? And when you have situations like this, and this is why it pays to stay active, because you can push a fight back if you ain't if you're active and you're constantly fighting and you're getting at least 2 fights a year, preferably 3, you can afford to push a fight back and say, look, I'm not ready, man. I have an injury. Let's push this shit back because I want to be 100% when I get in there. But when you only fight once a year, and sometimes not even once at all in the whole year, it's like, bro, when you got a fight coming up, you got to take that shit because, number one, you need to get paid, and then you have a mandatory a title that you have to defend that you only fight once a year for the mandatory. So it's like you got to get in there. You dig what I'm saying? But no excuses, though, because I feel like shit, if Gary Russell, had a legitimate injury, which I think he may have had just from common sense and what I saw in the fight. I mean, bro, you got to push that shit back. You got to let him know, like, hey, I can't do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I commend him for for being tough, strong, mentally, going out there and still competing with that injury. But at the same time, it's like, bruh, you're not active, and you get out there with that injury. You know what I'm saying? It's just not a good look. And I thought he looked old. Maybe it was the injury. Maybe he's just, it's inactivity. But I thought he looked old. You dig what I'm saying? So credit to Mark Magsayo for going out there and doing just enough to get the victory. I didn't think he was impressive at all, honestly. I thought that he got the victory based off his activity. And it's like that sometimes when you got two guys that really aren't doing anything significant in the ring. No huge punches are being landed. Nobody's really dominating the fight. You might have to give it to the guy that's throwing the most punches, that's controlling the pace of the fight, that's coming forward and putting pressure on. So I'm not mad at the decision at all. I think if anybody was going to get the victory, it should have been Mark Magsayo. But I actually thought the fight was a draw, But, Mark Magsayo, he's now the WBC featherweight champion. He ends the longest reign for a champion. That was at that time, Gary Russell Jr. was the longest reigning champion in boxing. So, that's a huge deal. And Mark Magsayo being undefeated, now he can go on and make some solid fights at 126. I would like to see him get up there to 130 and compete with the other top dogs at 130, man. But I don't know. As far as Gary Russell Jr., I really don't know what's next. This injury is definitely gonna set him back. He's probably gonna have to have surgery. I believe this is something that was lingering, so he's probably gonna end up having to have surgery, which is gonna take him out the ring even longer. I don't know if Gary Russell Jr. fights again this year. I would like to see him fight again. I want to see him get active. I think he needs to go ahead and move up to 130, man, and keep that activity up so you won't run into these issues like that. And if you do get an injury, you can afford to push it back because you staying active and you ain't got to just try to take anything you can get because you're staying active. So, Gary Russell Jr., hey, man, it is what it is. If he feels that he lost because of the injury, go get healthy, sharpen up your game, and go get you a fight. Get you some type of tone up, something that's going to keep you, sharp, and go ahead and get on up there to 130. I don't think there's anything left for us to see from Gary Russell Jr. at 126. I wouldn't mind a rematch with Magsayo, but honestly, if he can't get the rematch right away, ain't no use of waiting around at 126 trying to fight anybody else. Go ahead and get up to 130 and get in the mix with the big dogs at 130. You know what I'm saying? It's time. I think that half pound that he was struggling with at the weigh-in is a sign that you need to go ahead and move up. And I've been saying that Gary Russell Jr. needed to move up. It's about that time. There's really nothing else at 126, and all the competition, quite frankly, is at the weight class above. So y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments. How did y'all see that? How did y'all score that fight? Did y'all actually score it for Magsayo? Did you think it was a draw as well? Did you think Gary Russell Jr. won? I seen Gary Russell Jr. He said he thought he won 10-2. Absolutely not. I'm going to just be real with you. Absolutely the fuck not. But I respect Gary Russell Jr., man. I think he's a great talent, but when you out the ring like that for so long and then you having injuries, you missing weight, man, it's just not a good look. And you getting older in age too, so it's just not a good look, man. So y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments. What do y'all want to see next from Gary Russell Jr.? Where does he go from here? And then also, who you want to see Mark Magsayo fight next? Y'all let me know, man. Contender Regime Boxing. I'll holler at y'all boys, man.